For a simple twist on a classic old-fashioned, you should try out a cherry old-fashioned. Let me show you how to make it. Welcome back to the channel. I'm Matt, I'm the Whiskey Nerd, and like I said, this week I'm making a simple twist on a classic old-fashioned. I'm making a cherry old-fashioned, and I kind of got the idea for making this video when Rose and I reviewed this bourbon, or this technically not a bourbon, whiskey right here, Angel's Envy, because this started off life as a bourbon and was finished off in port casks. So that means it's technically not a bourbon, but it has lots of these kind of dark red fruits, extra kind of cherry sweetness to it, and I thought it would go really well in an old-fashioned cocktail. Now, standard old-fashioned is just whiskey, bit of sugar and a bit of bitters, but I'm doubling down on that cherry by adding a little bit of this Luxardo Maraschino Cherry Liqueur. It's not really like super cherry, it's not super sweet, it has like some kind of natural cherry flavors and a bit of herbal spices and botanicals that works well in an old-fashioned, especially since this is a kind of a spicy bourbon, so it kind of does stand up to it. I'm also using a little bit of the liqueur, or the kind of the sweet sugar syrup from the Luxardo Maraschino cherries, and some Angostura and some orange bitters to round it out and just make it into a classic old-fashioned. But that's enough talking about the cocktail. I think it's time we make it. It is going to be a stirred drink, so we're going to get our mixing glass and we're going to pop a nice rock of ice into there before we measure out the rest of our ingredients. We're going to start off with our Angel's Envy bourbon. You can kind of use whatever bourbon you like that has those kind of cherry notes, but I thought this worked really well and I thought it would be very good in this cocktail. We're going to go in with 1.5 ounces or 45 ml of our bourbon into there before we go in with our Luxardo Maraschino Cherry Liqueur. Like I said, this is not super sweet. If you have something else like a Kirsch or one of those kind of cherry brandies, you might need to use a different amount, but for this I found 10 ml, just about 10 milliliters, about 2 bar spoons is a very good amount because it does add a bit of sweetness, but you don't want to overpower the cocktail with too much sweetness. So if you have one of those cherry brandies or those Kirsches, you might need to go in with something like maybe 5 ml or 1 bar spoon just to avoid overpowering it. And speaking of cherry flavors, we're now going to go in with a little bit of the Marasca syrup from our Luxardo cherries. We're not going to go in with a cherry just yet. We're just going to get a bar spoon of this really nice, dark, really sweet kind of cherry sugar syrup into our cocktail, because that's going to give us a really nice strong cherry flavor that balances out with the kind of herbal botanical spiciness you get in the Luxardo liqueur. Next up, it's just going to be 1 dash of Angostura bitters and then 1 dash of orange bitters, because I think they're like your salt and your pepper, especially when you're making an old-fashioned cocktails. They just add a nice bit of roundness, a nice bit of spiciness, and just help make the cocktail a little bit more balanced, at least to my palate. So that there was 1 dash Ango and 1 dash orange. I'm just going to stir this for about 30 seconds to get nice and cold. Okay, I think this is nicely chilled now, so we're going to ready to strain it out into a nice rocks glass. We're going to put it on top of another fresh rock of ice just so we get a really nice chilled cocktail at the end of the day. So we're just going to get our strainer up top and pour it out plain and simple over our cocktail before we get ready to garnish it. We're going to be garnishing it with another cherry, really doubling down on that kind of cherry influence for, well, this cherry old-fashioned. So we're going to get one of our little Luxardo Maraschino cherries, just plain and simple. Pop it up top, sit it on top of that rock of ice if you can, just like that, and plain and simple, that is how I make a cherry old-fashioned. Now real quick, before I taste this cocktail, if you're new here, scroll down, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. I put out whiskey cocktails like this every Friday, and I put out whiskey reviews every Wednesday, like the review of the Angel's Envy bourbon. So if you want to see that, make sure you're subscribed. But right now, let's taste this cocktail. Cheers. That is, obviously it's a classic old-fashioned, but it's really nice. Like obviously it's going to be a really nice old-fashioned, but it doubles down that cherry influence, like the Marasca syrup, the Maraschino liqueur. You get this really nice dense cherry sweetness that I think works really well with that spiciness of the bourbon, the kind of the red berry notes you get from the port finish on the bourbon, the little bit of Angostura and orange bitters, just rounding things out, keeping things balanced. But it really does lean up front with that cherry flavor. You can see the color of it is nice. It's kind of red because it's got that Luxardo liqueur, the Luxardo Maraschino Marasca syrup in there. giving it a really nice dense cherry flavor. This would be one of those cocktails that you make, and because it's got that nice rock of ice in there, it'll evolve over time, it'll dilute a little bit and become a little softer, maybe a little bit sweeter, but right now it's a great little cocktail as it is. I think you should definitely try out. If you've got kind of old-fashioned riffs you think I would like, let me know down below because I'd love to hear from you. But right now I'm going to keep on enjoying this one, and I will see you next time. Sláinte.